Keeping venomous reptiles is an unforgiving hobby, requiring proper training and lots of experience. One simple mistake can be the difference between life and death. Remember, the most venomous snake in the world is the one that just bit you. There are no venomous snakes with training wheels. Just because you see viperkeeper handle snakes a certain way does not mean you should try it too.
I looked in the incubator and noticed that I had deflated eggs, which meant that something happened. Well, I also noticed a little tail sticking over the edge here, and it happens to be a baby ocellatus. There's the second one there, and the third one is down here in this corner. I guess now the fun really begins.
Yeah, how do you get something that tiny to do?
Well, we'll start with, small hatchling crickets and stuff. I think the greater question is, how do we keep them contained? They managed to crawl up the walls with a little bit of humidity on it, and that one made it out the hole. Snakes are certainly the most amazing escape artists that I've ever come across.
Yes, indeed. Look at that. Oh, it's just so cute. A little tiny thing. And still quite deadly, I'm sure.
Well, I wouldn't want to be nipped by it.
That's very exciting.
Now, I had planned 45 days for them to hatch, and that would have been April 2nd, so it's pretty close. Now I have to figure out what to do with these guys, but I think the first thing I'm going to do is dump this guy back down into there. They must have just hatched, because that one's still got ick on it, and so does that one. Or is that the first?
That looks like the first shedding.
So,
Yeah, this one, look, there's a shed skin there.
yeah.
That one shed, these two are still working on it.
Alright, so let's give everybody some hydration.
And of course, like any snake, they just really don't appreciate that. Look how fast it moves, even as tiny as it is.
Yep. Alright. It's amazing that it managed to get up the side, across the lid, and stuck to it enough to get its body through the hole. That's just totally amazing. So,
How exciting.
I don't think I'm going to address this issue in total till tomorrow.
Let's hope he doesn't get his little snoot caught on the tape.
Yeah, I know, this is...
Well, take the lid back off and put it on the other side. So adorable.
You know, I don't think... Do I have a little bit of screening somewhere? Let me try something else. Okay, since I couldn't get the screen in the incubator, I took a snake bag and we'll put it over top and put the lid down on it and seal it. This way they have air, but they're not going to make it through the holes in the lid again. Okay, so they have moisture, they have the right temperature, and they'll be okay until tomorrow when I decide exactly how to proceed.
Well, welcome to the world, little ones.
All right, it's time to move these guys about. Although I was sort of thinking leaving them in here. Baby Echis will dine on their siblings, so although they're very gregarious and when they're adult they like to hang together and do really well that way, babies will strike and have a feeding response. Once they go for it, they don't let go. They'll eat their siblings. So I want to get them separated. I want to get some little crickets in to see if they're going to start dining on crickets. And then in a day or so after I see what's happened, then I can figure out what to do next. So let's go across the hall and put them in individual bins. I've used these Squamata concept bins a number of times. They have a little rack and you're supposed to hatch the eggs. You have a stuck shed already, dude? Huh? You're supposed to, put the rack in there and put the eggs on the rack and just have them over water. However, I've never been able to get that to work properly, and we're saw scaling already. And subsequently I've gone back to the old tried and true vermiculite, and I have great success at hatching eggs on the vermiculite where over water. I don't know what it is, but they just don't make it. So here's a little guy with a shed that hasn't come off. That one's sort of not fully shed. This is very moist and very humid. I have my sensor push in there, which I've added because I find that it's a really, really good way of monitoring temperatures and humidities. I mean, in that container, the humidity is 92%, and I can tap on this, and well, you can see the temperature drop when I just come out of the room, as well as humidity was average, and you can move this line across. These are incredible little tools at very little cost that you can add to your incubator, and look, you can get a complete record: hour, day, week, month. It's just fantastic. I've got them in all the rooms here at the lair, as well as in specific places, just so I can have a good handle on temperature and humidity, as well as in the anti-venom fridge. I can keep track of the temperature of my anti-venom. There are alarms you can set, and it will notify you if you go out of range. So all very good things to have. So back to the saw scales. That's probably an alarm because the sensor is, temperature is out of range now and humidity is off. So rather than use my fingers, since the little saw scale has moved, I'm gonna just get this out of the cage and set it over here, and I'll repurpose it later. So I'm a little dismayed that this one hasn't really shed out, and shedding a little guy like that is quite the difficult task, because that little head is just so tiny, and to get your fingers around it and pull the shedding off without hurting the snake or without the snake hurting you is a very difficult task indeed. And there's the one that completely shed out.
Well, the good news is they've been kept nice and moist, so...
We'll see. I mean, this is why. Okay, maybe they don't have enough hard stuff to rub against to get the shedding off. This is a bit of the quandary.
Yeah, I'd give them a day in their new digs with those little cork bark logs, see if that will help.
Yeah.
Spritz them down real well.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, they don't like shake and bake, and that's probably why they're not so happy here. So I have 3 of my standard bins prepared with a little bit of cork bark for them to hide under, the walnut substrate, which I find for desert species or arid land species really well. The important thing to note is there are no air holes on this bin as compared to this bin. And what we have done in the past was, you know, if we didn't, I have some of these with holes, and if I end up with needing some without holes, I've taped over, but the tape sort of sticks to it on a semi-permanent basis and is really sort of yucky. So I really am hesitant on using that. So because these are just such escape artists, it's best not to have any holes. And what we'll do is we'll push some of the cage window sticks underneath the cage to sort of push it up against the roof to make the openings as small as possible. And we'll have to be still very vigilant to make sure that the little blighter doesn't escape. These are very difficult little snakes to contain. Hi, how you doing? I know you're so tough. There you go. I mean, that's real tiny. I'll take a little bit of, well, okay, it went in that direction. These are really, really tiny toxic worms. You know, trying not to disturb it a whole lot, but I just did when I moved it. So we will we'll slide them in there, and we'll put some crickets in there and hope that the little guy decides that eating is a good option. Yeah, I mean, you got your little part on your head here. God, I'm trying to help you out.
Of course, he doesn't appreciate it.
No, I mean, we saw this yesterday with the forest cobra. You know, my good intentions to help him out of a stuck eye cap in a bad shed turned into a life and death battle between us. No, we don't have it officially on film, but you know, in each room there's a webcam running, and we saw the whole spectacle, and from that we learn where we make mistakes and how things go down the toilet really fast. As I said yesterday in a quick note on the various Facebook pages I appear, working with venomous snakes is a lot like being an explosive ordnance disposal technician, an EOD guy. You never know when you're going to touch something and it's going to blow up in your face. And that's exactly what happened yesterday with Mr. Forest Cobra, who's generally you know, quite easygoing, easy to work with. However, I made the mistake of trying to pin his head to pull the eye cap, and he really didn't like that. And in the process, I broke, you know, a very long-standing trust with the animal. So it's really difficult sometimes to pick and choose. You know, do I intervene or do I let it go and hope that it doesn't, the animal doesn't get into real trouble, and then you have to seriously intervene. So here's number 2, and then we'll take number 3. And pick this little guy that's saw scaling up, and we'll try to be very gentle because this is a very, very small little customer. I don't have anything that I can put in there to, you know, use as a size thing. Oh, why do you have to turn to face the finger? But you know, that's it next to my finger. It is quite tiny, and I've had these before. The fellow that I got the parents of these from had a bunch of babies hatch last year, and he couldn't get them to feed or anything, and I got 3 of them here, and I tried working with them, but they all ended up dying. So I'm going to give this a try again. That's the best I can do. I have a friend in Europe who's tried to raise these, and like any other small saw scales, they're very difficult to get started on food in captivity. These are basically invertebrate feeders in the wild, and they have to eat a lot of little invertebrates and a lot of little crickets in order to get enough calories out of it to grow and sustain. And this is what we're using. We're using very small crickets to start to see if they're interested in feeding. And if this doesn't work, we'll try some other things, and force feeding will be the last possibility, but may be necessary. So I'm going to throw a few crickets in each one now. Then I've got them all situated, and we'll see if, you know, it's hard to gauge in a cage like this because the crickets will disappear into the cork bark, but I want to keep the cork bark in there so they have something to rub their shed off with, which I think was missing in the soft vermiculite. So we'll dump a few crickets in here for this little guy. And we'll put it in the rack and hopefully it will eat. And then we'll dump a few in with this guy. And then a few in with this guy. And we'll see what happens. Now the last thing I'm going to do is find some sticks to push those up and hope that it does the trick. I've got 3 available sticks. So we'll do this. It raises it up. I don't want to totally block it because, well, that one's a little thick for this job, so I'll exchange it somewhere else. Oh, stop it. Whenever you go past cages, you have things with feeding responses usually, and it wakes you up periodically as you go along. Okay, so I've got labels already made for those guys. I wish them the best. I will do my damnedest to keep them alive without getting bit myself, and we'll see how it goes. Well, this is the hatchling Echis ocellatus. This is one of the two that sort of had a dry shed. The other one had a nice shed. We put crickets in, but I don't think much is going to happen until after they get this shed off. So, here, you little wet noodle. I'm going to put them in here, which they're of course not going to like, but the whole thing is it's sort of like a little steam bath. It's not hot water, but it should loosen the skin. I put a towel in there so they can rub their bodies against it as they go. And then we're going to come back in a little while with cannula and something that may we'll try to fill their tummies with a little bit. Yeah,
where do you think you're going, huh?
Yeah, they have this ability to stick the walls when they're wet, and that's how they got up on the roof in the lid, or at least the one that shed out. So we're gonna have to keep sort of.
Not water.
Yes, they're not interested in that, but I want to get them wet enough so I can attempt to peel them. This is of course going to be very difficult without getting bit, but this is what needs to be done.
Nice try. Now take a nice drink. You need it.
You know, the dry shedding is really sort of hydrophobic, and it really takes a little bit of time for it to wet down and soak up some water and become really easy to remove. Well, we are getting some progress here. The skin is coming back off of him as he sort of moves along, and we'll not try to drown him, but help that along. So I don't have to hold them in my hands to do that, although I will because I am not going to wait a whole lot of time for them to start eating on their own. I am going to start feeding them one way, shape, or form. They're not taking to crickets so well, so I might start tease feeding them with little body parts. And if they're not interested in that, well, then we'll cannula feed them. And then maybe offer them some gecko parts. There's a variety of things that we can try. Of course, we want to try things that don't put our fingertips near their pointy little ends. But yeah, come on, back down. I know I'm being mean. What can I say? This is... snakes don't understand that, I'm just trying to help them. It's just like any other animal, whether it be a cat, dog, horse. Occasionally you have to, break that trust, and
that's the way. Just keep squirming, and it's pulling that off.
okay.
I hope he's not drowning himself.
Well, I'm more worried about him sneaking up and nipping me on the wrist. It's just, I don't think he's...
There he goes. He's getting that off.
Yeah, now he's drowning for sure.
Yeah, let's get him out from under there.
Dive, dive, dive. Yeah, this is working. Come on.
There we go. Now, there we go. Come up and get a breath.
Yeah, have a swim. I promise you, where your parents were from, there was very little water to deal with.
Just enjoy it while you can.
That's right. if you survive, you will live the good life with plenty of food and care and water, and somewhere down the road, maybe even a boy or a girl to live with. We're getting there. Come on, hold on.
There we go.
Okay, that's good enough. Do you want to go back into your dry spot? I think he was the first one you brought out, which I think was this one. So we're gonna put him back in his container. I think he likes.
He likes hiding under there.
Yeah, it's a nice little hiding place. Come on, come on. We'll put you back in, and you can play shake and bake for a while, because you are going to collect some stuff. There you go. There. Now he's back in there. We will move this to the back where it's in the warmest spot. And we'll just let him chill there for a little bit. Now that he's got that off, that's a big plus. That's moving their life expectancy a bit forward. How you doing? You've been sitting very comfortably. Now can we get this shedding off, huh? I know you think I'm drowning you, but I'm not. I'm just trying to get you moving a little bit to see if that shedding will come off, because it's right up on his head and neck. It doesn't look like it's going to come off, so we're going to intervene at this point because he's had a nice soak, and that might be a little. We'll go ahead and we'll test the waters. This, of course, is always hazardous because we have a very small snake that doesn't really want to be touched or handled, and I have to gently pin that head and also be able to wrap my fingers around the whole thing and then peel back some of that shedding. Come on, you're not in the right position. Now, you know, my friend Don always taught me never press a position. You wait for your opportunity, because as you see, they move their heads quite quickly. The butt end of that hook may be a little bit large for what I want to do. You can really snap their necks, and if you use something that's a little bit too big, you can't immobilize the head. And now we can see just how small that head is. It's funny, you know, when you're doing this to a snake to try to remove a shedding, you're also playing chiropractor, because I can feel all their little vertebrae go snapping into place when they're, you know, as if someone, you know, flexed your back and your vertebral column went into place. Hi, yeah, no, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to hurt you. I am going to try to get as much of this shedding off you as possible. So you can move around comfortably and grow and stuff. Okay, so that's some of it. Oh, I know. Now you're really angry with me. Okay. So right now it's death rolling, and I should, either reposition or just bail out. So what I will do, and unfortunately I don't have my high mag glasses here, is I will try to not let that head get around on me and get it loosened up a little bit. I know this is unpleasant. Oh, that's stuck on there. Okay, so you need to soak a little bit more. I did get some of it off. Come on, okay, come on. I know, this is scary. So we got some off, and now it just doesn't want to hook at all, so there, you can go back in there and swim a bit more. Maybe we can try pulling it off retrograde. Okay, you watch for a second. I am going to get a different pair of glasses so I can actually see what I'm doing. I know you're hiding over there. You know, this was the one that was more severely dried out than the other, so that skin may take a little bit more time to rehydrate.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like we can put a hand moisturizer on it. Oh, you have Echis skin, my dear. You try some of this new hand cream I have. Yeah, I know you're upset. I'm sorry, but you know, this is the way it goes in the snake world. There's lots of things that can happen to take you out of the gene pool, and having a stuck shed is just one of those things. Now, if he was, you know, in his native, let's say, Nigeria, or Burkina Faso, I think that's what it's called, he might not make it. The skin is restrictive for eating. The skin is restrictive for agility and mobility. He might not be able to evade a predator. He might not be able to eat a food item that's a little bit larger than he had hoped to catch. So all these things can be quite detrimental to a little baby snake like this.
That is really stuck on there.
Yep. Is indeed. Curl. You know, it may even take a few hours sitting in here to fully hydrate and sort of fall off. So we're gonna put the lid on and hope that it stays put and that the lid will contain them, because you know how these things are. So I think we'll get something relatively heavy and put it on just to weight this. It's a pretty good fit, but I think that'll probably do it. I picked a container with no holes on the side. These are all things you need to consider when working with these little tiny baby snakes.